If you're like me and you eat a lot of plants, there will come a time you'll want to grow them yourself. And that happened to me in 2017 when I moved into a house for the first time that had a garden. I spent every bit of spare time planting vegetables and pottering about. But then the next year I moved back into a flat and I had to completely change the way I grew things. So one of the biggest challenges when I moved was what to do with my food scraps. I can't have a typical composter because it's too big, and my council does not collect food waste, which is incredibly frustrating. So I needed to find a small space solution. And that's when I found Bokashi composting. I can compost my food scraps and make nutrient-rich soil all from my small London flat. And today I'm going to show you how to do it too. Welcome to Replenish with Plants. My name is Sue. How do you do? I am an online nutritional therapist focused 100% on plant-based foods. So Bokashi composting originated in Japan, but is now gaining popularity worldwide as a sustainable method of recycling organic waste. It uses a fermentation process to break down organic waste into nutrient-rich compost, which you can then use to grow your own fruits and vegetables. The term Bokashi actually means fermented organic matter in Japanese, and with the help of beneficial microorganisms found in Bokashi brand, it can break down fruit and vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, tea leaves, grains and bread, garden waste like dead leaves, shredded paper and cardboard. Really anything that says compostable on it you can put into your Bokashi, like tea bags or parchment paper. It's a win-win as this significantly lessens the amount you're putting into your bin, and then you will be rewarded with good soil at the end. Bokashi composting is really a two-part process. The first part is all about the fermentation that happens inside the Bokashi bin in your kitchen. And the second part is about what you do with the waste after it's done fermenting. If you have a garden, this is when you would dig a hole and bury the fermented waste directly into your planting beds. But in a flat or apartment, we have to get a bit inventive with what we do. To start a Bokashi composting system, you'll need a container or a bin with an airtight lid. Typically, the bins will come with a mesh plate that sits at the bottom so that the scraps aren't sitting in liquid once it starts to break down. It also comes with a tap to drain the bin and something to mash the waste down. You can make these yourself, or if you're in the UK, you can check out your local council, as some of them offer discounts on Bokashi bins, and that's where I actually got my first set from. And if you are a large household, you may need to buy a bigger bin or have a few bins on hand to keep in rotation. Next, you're going to need some Bokashi bran. This is made from wheat or rice bran with added ingredients made up of lactic acid bacteria, yeasts, and other types of bacteria which work together to break down the organic waste through fermentation. You can make it yourself, but currently I am using some that I bought online. And finally, you'll also need somewhere to put the waste once it's done fermenting. And this is where we can get inventive. I use a large plastic storage bin that I drilled holes into, plus some potting soil, which I use to cover the waste to let it fully decompose. The size of your bin will really depend on where you're going to store it. I have a small roof terrace where I keep mine, but if I was going to have it on my balcony, I'd go for a smaller container. You can also keep it inside your flat, but you don't want to drill holes in it because then it'll start leaking through. I would also recommend some gloves and a trowel or something that you can dig and stir the food into once you put it into the soil. Throughout the week, collect your food scraps into a bowl or a small compost bin. And when you have enough, it's time to put them into your Bokashi bin. I tend to do this on a Sunday just because it's part of my routine. It's important to add scraps in layers so that you can make sure you get some of the bran over each piece. Then you'll push down the waste into the bin, trying to get out as much air as possible to help it ferment. Once you have the air out, you will need to seal the lid. Make sure it's on really tight and that no air is going to get in to avoid getting any bad mold. This is an anaerobic system, which means you don't want any air in it whatsoever. Every few days you'll want to open the tap on your bin and drain off the liquid, which is actually called Bokashi Tea, but do not drink it. You can, however, add it to water at a ratio of 1 part Bokashi Tea to 100 parts water and use it to water your plants. When you've filled your bin to the top, it's now time to let it sit for a few weeks to fully ferment. While it's fermenting, the organic waste breaks down and eventually you'll end up with a nutrient-rich, slightly acidic compost. This time will vary depending on the temperature of where you're keeping your bin. Bokashi composting doesn't require a specific temperature range to work, but it's recommended to keep the bin in a warm, dark location, ideally between 18 to 25 degrees Celsius for optimal fermentation. I keep mine in a storage closet, and in the summer, sometimes it takes only 2 weeks, and the winter can take more than a month, which is why it's good to have multiple bins on the go. After a few weeks, make sure your Bokashi bin is fully drained, and then you can dig a trench in your storage box that's filled with potting soil. You can then pour the fermented waste into the trench and then fully cover it with soil. Now you'll need to wait a few weeks for the food to further break down before you can use it. And then after that, you can plant away. Now, if you open your bin and find white mold, don't worry. The fuzzy stuff is just a sign that some air got into your Bokashi bin, and you'll want to check your lid is on tight and that the tap is fully closed. I've had it quite a few times and it's fine. But if you find black, green, or blue mold, or if your compost has a really foul odor, then something's gone wrong and you'll need to discard what's in your bin, clean it out thoroughly, and start again. If you have any questions about Bokashi composting, or if you want to share your own experience with small space composting, please let me know. You can find me online at replenishedwithplants.com or on Instagram at replenishedwithplants. Thank you, bye-bye.